You're an angel.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so excited to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and the rain's coming. Oh, this would be so excited if we get to have a rain combo.
Oh, it's like, when Taylor Swift has the rain show.
Yeah.
I knew you would know what I'm referring to.
Big Taylor Swift fan.
Same.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cortney Warner, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. How are you doing?
Very happy to have you. I love this neighborhood we're in. Actually, we're going to drive by a house that my wife would love.
Really?
Yeah, literally, she and I don't have the same tastes, and she always wins on style. Like if we're like, I don't like that. Like if it was up to me, I'd live in a log cabin. But this beautiful house up here, so I was like, oh, you got a great neighborhood.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a bit farther out than I feel like, most of the mics are like in East Nashville and stuff like that, but it's cheaper out here and it's quiet.
You know, you and I met at such a pivotal time in my life because I was visiting Nashville last year.
Yeah,
You're one of the
you did my show.
Yep, I did your show in the little. It was in a little music room. What was it called?
Bowery Vault. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's upstairs. Yeah.
There were cowboy boots lining the stage.
That's how they keep people from just jumping over the stage, is they have lights underneath there that like light from so they don't want people stepping over them.
Oh, no way.
But it's cute. I think it looks good.
Now, what's the capacity of that room? 40 people?
I think like 40,
Love it.
Maybe 50 at most.
If it wasn't about the money, I think I would be perfectly fine performing in front of 40 people every night.
I get it. Yeah, because it's like, I think about, those comics who do like the Bridgestone Arena shows or whatever, and that's amazing. That's a huge feat as a comedian.
Imagine the echo.
I know. And
no feedback from your audience.
And you have to wait. It's like you have to wait for the joke to reach the back then it gets back to you, and it's really, the timing I feel like would throw you off.
I read or watched a TikTok reel that was... Let's be honest. I read something. I read the captions of a TikTok, and it was Jimmy Carr. And he said the advice he gives other comedians is he listens to music that's 92 beats per minute.
Okay.
And he does that because it's the right speed that, like, he thinks people can absorb content, like speaking almost in the intonation that is of a song that's not. So I actually have a Spotify playlist I started listening to.
Yeah.
That's called 92 BPM.
Oh, okay.
I got to tell you, because I think I'm naturally over caffeinated. I think I talk too much. I think my whole audience will agree. And whenever I make captions of my own videos, the auto captions don't know what the hell I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, so I have that too.
So I go, if the captions don't know what I'm saying, how does the audience know what I'm saying?
Dude, I know. I think about that too, especially when I'm nervous for a show or something, and I just like speed through whatever, and it's like I'm not getting laughs on jokes that I normally would, and it's just like, because they probably can't understand what the hell I'm saying.
And I've seen that in the audience, not with you, but I've seen that where I go, oh, this person's rattling. I used to open for a comedian, and we did the improvs across the country, and the one thing all the improvs had, at least at the time, was a Starbucks. Oh no, so Starbucks. They had a Red Bull refrigerator.
Oh yeah.
And it would be chocolate Red Bulls, and I was like, I'm the cheap kid who's like, I'm gonna drink as many Red Bulls as possible.
Oh no, yeah, that's what is that? Like where there's something free, you just take everything because like you may never get it again.
That's it.
Were we abused as children?
I think so. I think I wasn't provided enough.
Yeah.
So my sister and I would fight over things.
Yep, I would do that with my brother. I get it.
And so because of that, I have to clear my plate, and I have to, and it's none of which is good for me.
Right.
But the idea of communicating, and again, it's almost like naturally I want to be driving a Lamborghini, but it's a school zone.
Yes. Yeah.
So getting up to the speed, if the audience is jiving at a faster speed, might be good.
Right.
But naturally, and I did a weed show last year when I was living in LA, and a buddy of mine runs the show. He was like, look, the audience is going to be so high.
Yeah.
You have to go so slow.
Yeah.
And I did, and it did really well. I was like, there's something there.
That's the thing. I love doing those weed shows because like when they start laughing, they all start coughing. Yeah. So you're really crushing it. The whole room is happy.
When you can choke a stoned person.
Yes.
We used to do this one show. It was they would get too high.
Yeah.
And you would just hear like Dorito bags opening. It was like the weed audience makes a lot of noise when they get the munchies.
Right.
They like very crispy things.
Yes.
Like I like eating churros in the back.
I get that. Yeah.
So are you from here? Tell us about you.
No, I'm from Ohio originally.
What part?
I say Cleveland, but it's like a suburb of Cleveland called Manaway.
So far away.
So pretty, so like maybe 40, 50 minutes outside of the city proper. So I grew up like pretty rural Ohio, like very like poor, like working class area of town.
Would they call that the Rust Belt?
I think that's more like Michigan, I'd say. Okay. But I think like there's a lot of similarities. I feel like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania are all very similar.
What type of like industry was there?
Lots of, man, that's a good question. So a lot of cars. We had a lot of auto stuff.
Okay, yeah. You have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there too, right?
Yeah, I have a lot of museums there too. Like, because in Akron, which is about an hour south of me, has the Football Hall of Fame and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. The Science Museum and the History Museum, both they are really like big too. So a lot of like, I guess like educational stuff, which is cool.
Interesting.
But yeah, and also like they have a lot of banks there. Like I remember distinctively my dad working in this building called the Key Tower Bank, for like Key Bank, which I don't even think Key Bank exists anymore. But big bank industry too.
I would have never known that of the northern Ohio area.
Yeah.
You know, my wife's from Kentucky, but next to Cincinnati.
Okay, yeah.
About the other side of Ohio.
Yeah, I have family in Cincinnati.
Oh,
so
nice.
I used to go there pretty often. So.
Do you have family in Ohio still? Because that's probably like a 6-hour drive.
From where I live, probably like an eight. Then like an hour time change. So I always chalk it to about 9.5 hours. But yeah, my mom, my dad, my brother, like my whole family still lives in Ohio. I think I'm the only one that like moved, to be honest.
Your mom worked you said your dad worked at a bank. Did your mom work in Ohio as well?
She stay-at-home mom, because I was homeschooled. And
homeschooled.
Yeah, my brother was too. So she worked in a hospice before her and my dad adopted me and my brother. But then after that, then she went back to work and like took care of like old people when we were in high school. But yeah, she just chilled at home. Not chilled. That sounds like really not okay.
No,
she worked very hard.
I totally get it. My wife is a stay-at-home mom right now. She's already itching to start to get back to work a little bit.
Damn.
But luckily for her, she's a freelance model, so going back to work might just mean 2 hours a week.
That's not bad.
It might just mean going to an audition where you meet like-minded people and you get booked on a gig or not. So the idea of people going full-time back to work is so sad to me.
I know.
I'm not kidding I'm not going to do this, but I'm not kidding when I say I want to run for office to change the broken system that makes people decide, because you go back to work, you can barely afford the daycare that it costs to even go back, and it's just such a sad. When I first got into working in business out of college, my boss was like a week back from maternity leave. She quit 2 weeks later, and she just couldn't deal with it. And it wasn't a sign of weakness. It was like her intuition telling her, I should not be away from my baby right now.
Yeah, that's a week. That's crazy.
She tried to go back. No, she wasn't a week past delivery. Okay. She was like a week past whatever the allowed for.
Oh, I see. Sounds like that would be fucking
6
insane.
weeks, whatever. I can't even imagine with our baby being 10 weeks. I barely get an hour like where my wife isn't with the baby.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it's very sad to see culturally. And by all means, I respect the people that do want to go back to work.
Right,
I just think the option is not normally theirs. It's normally like you have to make a financial decision.
Agreed. Oh, for sure. Because you hear in Europe, it's like they take like they have paternity leave and maternity leave for like months and months and months, and then here in the States, it's like you just have to deal with it.
And what good is an employee that just has? I wouldn't want an employee that's there because they're like Now my wife is reading a book. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but the point of the book is that there's a belief that you can remember being in the womb.
Oh,
which
damn.
I don't know if I believe, but I do believe that some people spiritually might have the ability to remember things that were like off of this plane. So I love the idea of it.
I do too.
What's your earliest memory?
Oh God, that's a good question. I think I genuinely, and it's either. I think it was the first time I saw the movie Mrs. Doubtfire. I'm not lying.
Love it.
It's the first movie I remember consciously seeing and being like, oh, this is a movie. And it was a scene where Robin Williams' mask falls out of the window and it gets run over. And for some reason that scared me as a kid, like seeing someone's face get run over. But I couldn't stop watching it. I would replay it, and I found that very fascinating. And so that was like probably my first memory that I can recall that I still like am cognizant of.
At what age did you know that you were adopted? Because I didn't know you were adopted, so I don't have any agenda to my questions. But
no,
really interesting, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, definitely. Probably, I was probably preschool, because even though I was homeschooled, I went to preschool for like a year or however long you're in preschool for. And I met I saw people I'm still friends with to this day, which is crazy. And probably then, just because wasn't used to not seeing people who didn't look like their parents, because we also, like, growing up, there were other people who were other families who adopted who we were friends with too, so I was just used to that as a kid.
So white parents?
Yeah, white parents. White, super Christian, super conservative, all the things that it makes it hard to still be. Yeah. Also, if you can cut this for your audience too if you don't want this in here.
No, it's fine.
But we don't have a lot in common anymore, unfortunately.
What, you and your parents?
Yeah, just with how we view the world.
Because their view has remained super Christian.
Super Christian, super conservative, to the point of like being into like QAnon stuff. So. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I had my mom on last week, and I wasn't really wanting her to be a guest because I was just like, I don't know if she's going to do okay.
Yeah.
But she did great.
Yeah.
And she does have a lot of beliefs that I think play into a lot of just media fear. And I think that older generation does play into fears in ways that maybe our generation doesn't.
Yeah, I think
I know people get really upset, but I mean it with compassion, that it's like, hey, not everything's deep state, not everything's... There are conspiracies that do come out, but that doesn't mean every single one is there.
Dude, I know. Like, that's kind of with my parents, too, where I just had to kind of stop talking about it, where it's like, we just don't talk about it anymore, because it was just like... It just wasn't good for either of us, you know what I mean? Where we both just kind of... I don't know. We don't really have a lot to talk about, because that's really all that they want to talk about, you know?
Yeah, and so I was, last weekend, my mom and stepdad were in town, and then I dropped them off to church because they wanted to go to a Catholic church here, and I don't go anymore, but I would go, but it's like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not just like, whatever. And while they were dropped off is when we heard about the Trump assassination attempt.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
This is going to hijack my time with my parents.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So I didn't tell them right away, because and then they watched the news, and I just told my mom, like, get it out of your system, go watch the news for 10 minutes, but I just don't want to lose you to this story.
Dude,
not taking away from it, but just like, I've already felt like politics have robbed me from the sort of sincerity of family time.
Dude, yeah.
And they were fine, and then we were fine after that, but it's hard sometimes to untangle the Christmas lights, metaphorically, with all of the information that we all get that looks differently. And
I agree.
So you've learned boundaries to discuss.
It's been more recent. I think through a lot of therapy, where it's just been more of me doing my own personal self-work on, like, not getting super emotional when I get a weird response from, you know what I mean? Because it's hard because they're your parents, but it's like having to set that emotional and physical boundary of, like, I'm just not going to talk about this. We're not going to bring this up. That's just the best thing.
Hard to bite your tongue.
It is. Oh, God, there's been so many times.
Because unlike if you met some random person, your family, you're used to giving them how you feel. But like, what I've learned about religion or talks of politics, because in today's world, politics kind of intertwine with religion in a way.
Yeah.
It's like the same DNA that will supersede the family. Like, for example, I'm pretty pro-union. I'm in the Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah.
They've paid me money when I was really broke.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like anti-union, but also like they're like anti, in some ways, handouts.
Yep.
But then likewise, they've also received handouts from the government.
Yeah,
so it's like,
I know.
You want to be like, hey, you can't just overcome adversity and then not want to help other people overcome adversity.
Dude, and I see that also in comedy too, with people who have directly benefited from systems in place but don't want to help people
tell me about that.
Without getting too let me just like put everyone on blast. I've just seen people that I just on a more of micro level, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible, but like without letting on. I'm sure people who know me can deduce this stuff, but just seeing people who have directly benefited from having certain systems in place in comedy, like getting on certain shows or getting in front of certain people, but then when they're in a position to maybe help others, they're just like, oh well, I did it all on my own. And it's like, well, you didn't really.
Nobody does it on
their own, and people have inherent privileges more privileges than other people do in any regard. Like in whatever situation that they're in there, and people who aren't willing to acknowledge that really drive me crazy.
I think that's a good point. It's not all, and trust me, because I benefit from plenty privilege, but it's everyone in the end, like, you have to play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah.
And if you have the privilege,
yeah,
just, like this whole talk about Nepo babies. It's
yes.
like, people just acknowledge it. Yes, you worked hard. Your dad's Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Right.
Like, okay, great. You worked hard. Good. That's the bare minimum. Everyone's working hard.
Right. That's it. That's literally all. That is the bare minimum.
Like, it's but a lot of not everyone, but a lot of times when you do succeed as a comedian, you do want to bring some friends along to open for you, and you hear about comics like I've heard about like Cat Williams pays crazy good.
Yeah,
to
I've
some
heard
of his
that
openers,
too.
Just a stack of $6 grand.
Yeah,
and then I've also heard of other arena acts that pay really bad for their openers.
I've heard that too.
And I think that the conversations I've heard were from New York comedians talking about Nashville comedians.
Oh.
And I love to hear about that.
I do too.
If someone's selling out 8,000 tickets, how much money they're making, and you're going, dang.
Yeah, dude.
I'm making $20 right now, right?
Right, dude. I've heard that too. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's just like, because we all pretty much start in comedy we all are shitty at comedy when we start out. We don't know anyone usually unless you're related, unless you're Pauly Shore, pretty much, what I mean?
And even then, it's not going to win
it's
an
a
audience
gamble.
more than 5 minutes.
Oh God, no. I saw, on a tangent, he did a voiceover role for a reboot of Pinocchio, which was really bizarre and weird. I'm like, was he desperate for money to do this role? It's technically a kids movie, so you could play it at home, but it's just like Pauly Shore doing his voice but being Pinocchio.
But even him, he tours a little bit,
right?
But like, he doesn't perform. He doesn't sell tickets like someone who's really good.
Right.
I actually met him. My roommate was his assistant in LA.
Whoa.
And he had me and like 2 other people over to have a screening to watch his documentary.
Oh yeah.
Which was like, and it was interesting because it was like, he's doing small rooms, and it was just interesting to see someone who's probably on the back, like, he was really famous in like the 90s.
Oh yeah.
What did he do? Encino Man?
Encino Man. He did the Goofy movies.
He had a whole catchphrase, and then to see his crowd sort of age, but also still come out to him on a much smaller level.
Right.
That's always fascinating to me. But he's also the son of Mitzi Shore, who created, one of the more successful comedy scenes.
Right.
So the idea of, I guess it's really like equity and knowing sometimes, like, I've had some successes comedy adjacent, but I'm still like dogfight in the comedy world.
Dude, yeah.
And you just try to, like, I always try to be as open source as possible about what's worked for me.
Right.
And that doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else, but I do have what I believe to be some, not cheat codes, but like, hey, this is how it's working online.
Yeah.
You gotta, like, these things are working. Patreon has this new feature that helps you with this. Like, because in the end, I do think comics do want to work hard, but I do think we're labeled as lazy because sometimes we don't even know what it is we're supposed to do to get to that next level.
I agree, because it's like, it's such a mystery too, because it's like, I feel like a lot of people, at least the people that I kind of run around with here in Nashville in the comedy scene, we're all kind of at a level where things happen every now and again for us, but nothing's really popped off yet. And it's just like, well, what do we do? Like, do we look for management? Do we wait? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just no one, and I feel like people who have made it a little bit more farther along than some of us aren't sharing that info. It's like, no, it's a mystery.
And what worked 5 years ago is stale news.
And that's the thing. I think that's what it is too, because people who have tried to give advice, and it's just like, oh well, TikTok didn't exist then, or something like that. You know what I mean?
I have a friend who's back in Los Angeles, and she's really bummed out and exhausted, and has all that resistance you feel about like social media, and you just it's so easy to say you got to get a following, but it's like, what do you do? And I personally think that these stand-up clips are kind of dead.
I think so too.
And I think now, but you can still bring your art to TikTok, but you have to make it look more authentic. I think Andrew Schultz pioneered the stand-up clip. He before TikTok, he was doing that on YouTube, and he was one of the first to like hire his own film crew. And now it's like, of course, he's got a full team. He's making millions, selling out Madison Square Garden. But at the time, it was like, oh, this is really cool to see that he's bringing a camera crew around to get this. But now with the advent of the pandemic made everyone jump into stand-up, and like there's an oversaturation there.
For sure. I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and she does TikTok and Instagram full time, like sketches and all that stuff, and she was telling me that the TikTok algorithm does not seem to like written sketches. They want the front facing you talking to the camera, and you can, and like she was telling me, you can slip joke, like, yeah, almost like a talk show, like how either you get like the 5 minutes on the couch or the 5 minutes of stand up, you know, like on Conan or something, where if you can do your bits on the couch, or you can, and that's kind of what that was kind of like how I looked at it, where it's like, oh, you can do your bits to the camera like you're talking to your buddies, you know, but it has to feel like you're talking to them.
That's a perfect way to speak of it, because like if you were to go back in the day on the Tonight Show, they would want you to rework a stand-up bit in a conversational form,
right?
And now I tell people, rework your opinions, whether it's stand-up you already have, or just an opinion that you don't want to develop into a bit that's topical. Work that into a conversation with your audience,
right?
I had a video go super viral a few weeks ago. I've never had a video hit 1 million views, and this Instagram video hit 5 million.
Damn!
I paid $600.
Yeah. What?
I was in the bonus program, and it paid all this money, and my audience went from 25,000 on Instagram to 45,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in days.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really a niche I really want to capitalize on. I was talking about like skincare. But I realized why it did well, because first I had my baby straps to me, which was probably
people love that shit.
Very like what's the movie The Hangover?
Yeah, The Hangover. Yeah.
And then I was talking about how I've saved a lot of money by making my own oil concoction as a face thing.
Yeah.
And I was sort of kidding, but it's also what I use.
Yeah.
And it did involve some information, which is like you can buy this stuff online a lot cheaper and save money.
Right.
And the video was getting 100,000 views an hour.
That's crazy.
And I was like, oh, I gave people information.
Yeah.
And I did it in a niche that I'm not normally the one giving it.
Right.
And that's what I do with my Bachelor content. I'm a man, and I've taken I don't want to call it privilege, but I've taken a market that men aren't normally in, and so it's like if you were like, I don't know, wanted to talk about motorcycles, and you got into a world that's all dominated by white guys talking about motorcycles, they might be like, oh, this is, you know, it's just like, it's like, what can you do that brings a little bit of something different to the internet?
Right. I love that. And that's a really good tip too, because it's so like, I think about social media as like, oh, this is a personal thing that I do, but also how do I monetize my personality? You know what I mean? Which I think that's comedy in general. It's like, how do you commodify? How do you who you are as a person and sell it to people? You know?
Yeah, and it's like you're building something that you can't see what you're building, and one day it turns on. Yeah. So you're just putting all the flanges and all the time into it by developing your persona, and then one day it's like, you're a fully functional person who's viral online. Right. And I think you just have to have faith that that does exist, only if you continue to work on that thing you're building that you don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, I feel you. That's actually something I remember. I listened to the Workaholics podcast. The guys, they have their own podcast together, those guys, and they were saying whenever people approach them on the street, they're like, how did you get your TV show? How did you make it? They were like, we made like 800 sketches on YouTube, and Comedy Central found the one that we did in an office building that they liked, and that's how we sold our TV show. But you have to make like an ungodly amount of content before anyone it's just to get, you know, for like 30-40 views or whatever, just to get what's this?
I don't know. This is a nice neighborhood though.
Yeah.
My map took me this way.
Is this the house
is
that the house your wife would
I gotta make a few more videos before that. A really nice neighborhood.
A few more skincare
videos. It's like a two-way street that looks like it could fit a golf cart in it. I love this. Oh my gosh, this is such a nice neighborhood.
This is pretty.
For those listening on audio, you have no idea. You got to go over to YouTube.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it.
Although they're not going to see anyway, but anyway.
That's true.
So, and I think the other thing is too, is I used to have a podcast. I learned a lot by doing it. I didn't make any money or whatever. And then my YouTube channel took off, and then several years went by, and I relaunched a new podcast. And I think and it took off because I had enough of my voice of what I wanted to do to make it happen. And I think it should be said that, you know, there's no wasted time when you're learning about yourself and when you're learning the techniques of 92 beats per minute or how to ramp up a joke to the perfect level of energy. You don't have to break it down scientifically, but you are building all of this knowledge if you're actually working on it. And a lot of people, like I said, might sit on their hands because they don't even know where to start. And that's kind of like the multi-goal syndrome of being like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know where to start.
Dude, yeah, I feel you on that. I think I feel like a lot of people in comedy like have that too, where it's just like, or just almost like, yeah, they're paralyzed almost, like they don't know what to do next, or should they post a clip, should they not post a clip. I mean, the amount of conversations I've had with comedian friends being like, when should I post this reel at this time? And it's just like, it doesn't matter. That's the thing, because like people, I wish it did matter, because it'd be so much easier. Good
content will defy any algorithm, and sometimes there's a cheat code, but like don't be ruled by it.
Yeah.
So when did you get into stand-up, and did you have like your family's blessing? What was that all like?
No. First off, no. And then no to the family thing. And I started doing stand-up about 7-8 years ago here in Nashville. I moved here from Ohio, like I mentioned, and I wanted to be a musician, actually. I wanted to be like a studio and session touring musician. I didn't want to, I didn't want to be an artist or at the time, like with music. I just wanted to, I was more fascinated by learning what other people have written and then like trying to replicate that for them.
What specific instrument?
Oh, guitar.
Oh, okay.
So I played guitar predominantly. I did a little bit of drums and keyboard or piano too, like way back in the day. And I did that for like a year because I worked with some people, just people I'd met like in college and stuff, who were working on their independent projects. I worked on that here, realized I didn't like it that much, and then I quit playing music basically and took a year to figure out what I wanted. Again, I was like 20, 22, 23. So I felt like my world was ending. Right. I thought, you know what I mean?
So young.
I know. I was just like, I have nothing. Oh, I've worked for this my whole life.
We'll always think that, where like you will always have that I missed the boat thing.
God.
And then 10 years later, kick yourself.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same rule of investing. Best time was 10 years ago. Second best time is today.
Right.
or whatever the saying is.
Right. I mean, I do it even now. Like I'm 31. I just turned 31. And I'm just like, God, I'm getting too old for this. I'm too old for entertainment. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I mean, you wouldn't be... If you love what you do and you work really hard, you'll always have these questions of like, am I on the right timeline? This person broke at that age? And,
right. Oh, dude. Like, I think when I started seeing comics like break who were either born the year that I was, or like, you know, like Pete Davidson we're the same age. He got SNL
early.
Stuff like that. Or like even like YouTube people that I look up their age and I'm just like, oh, you were born in 93 as well. Cool, great. You know what I mean? And that was a weird feeling that I started getting when I got a little bit older. When, you know, the people on TV. When the people on TV were no longer older than me, you know?
Oh my gosh, now
they're younger than me.
Well, now it's like athletes are retiring and they're younger than me.
Oh God, I know.
I'm 39 and they're like, this guy's an old washed up athlete. I'm like, he's 3 years younger than me.
Right, exactly.
He's worth $200 million. What am I doing with my life?
Like when people are like, Travis Kelce should retire. I'm like, he's 34.
Yeah,
like,
what should he do? Send him out to the pasture. Yeah.
Right, yeah, like he's an old fart. Well, I mean, people say that about Taylor Swift too, and I'm like, oh God, they're both 34. Like what?
I know. And you know, with stand-up, it can take a long time to marinate. But stand-up is one of the least ageist
it's weird,
pop star. If you're 22, it's like, you didn't do the Disney Musketeers circuit, you're too old.
Right.
With stand-up, it's like, can you tell jokes or not?
Yes, exactly.
You might miss like the trendy part of stand-up where, you know, whatever, but like there's always going to be a market. So all right, so you're tinkering around Nashville trying to figure out what to do with life.
So I had my day job at Trader Joe's, and then I was miserable there too. I don't mind saying that on camera.
How can you be miserable at Trader Joe's?
Oh God, I mean, shopping there is, now that I haven't worked there for like 2.5 years, I'm like, I love shopping there now.
Yeah.
But like working there was a whole other situation.
You're just sad in a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, honestly though, it's like just feeling like a sad clown, you know what I mean?
I'd be stress eating with some of those cookies they have.
Dude, well that was my thing, was I wasn't a super huge coffee drinker until I started working there, because you can get those free samples of coffee. That was almost like a smoke break.
That coffee's real strong.
Oh, it's super. Oh, I mean, it was. I used to work 5 a.m. shifts too, so I needed that as well. But like for me, I got like a caffeine addiction, because I would just like, I want to take 5 minutes off my feet. I'll grab some coffee.
By the way, where's the
Trader Joe's?
Trader Joe's here.
The one that I worked at is in Green Hills. I'm just putting it full on blast. I guess I'll never have a job there again. But I
haven't been since I moved, and I miss it because that was my big LA.
I was gonna say LA's it's lousy with them for sure. But the one in Belmead is where I shop now. It's also really close to here. And I like a lot of my friends who worked with me at Green Hills transferred to that store, so I recommend shopping at that one.
Interesting. So you didn't side gigs are side gigs. So you felt complacent, old. You're 23.
Yeah, I was like, what am I? I'm like, you know, I'm past my prime. What am I going to do? And I think also doing music for so long, that was the mentality of like, if you don't hit at like 20, like as a teenager, then you have maybe till you're 25, and after that you're old, you know? And that was always the mentality in the music business, it felt like. So I kind of, you know,
and more so as a woman, probably.
Oh, for sure. And it's like,
to be quite fair,
I mean, yeah,
it's pretty creepy.
It terribly creepy. And I mean, comedy also has not always been kind to me either.
Oh, what? No.
What? There's weirdos in comedy.
Anytime there's gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Casting,
anything like
stage time.
Yeah, there's
gonna be someone who's like, "I want to write jokes with you," and
right.
Why are her pants off?
Yeah, 100%. Oh my God, that's way too true. Unfortunately,
not to say it should be that way, but I'm just saying I understand.
And yeah, so I feel like, but yeah, music and comedy are similar in like the business side of that. There's a lot of predators. I feel like, you know, both looking financially and emotionally and physically across the board. But yeah, so I just kind of was farting around for a year, and then I just remember having this memory where I was watching the American version of The Office, and I was just sitting there, and I don't even remember what episode it was, what joke it was, but I was like, that's funny. Why is that? It's so good. People like to shit on it now because it's so popular, but
do they?
They do.
Oh, Steve Carell is
genius.
One of the best.
Honestly, it's a crime he never got an Emmy for his work.
Unbelievable.
He got a Golden Globe, I know, but like never an Emmy, which is crazy. Good. But
and the little mannerisms, he's so
honestly, he's like very childlike, and it's hard to pull off acting like a child pretty much as an adult, you know.
Love it.
Crush it.
I knew I liked you, so we have a shared bond of Steve Carell.
Oh, I'm planning on getting an Office tattoo. I'm going to get the one from the dinner party episode, but it's going to be a skeleton of him that is holding up a little TV that says, "I love this TV."
Love it.
And I want to get it in here, so I'm going to hit up my guy Andy. Shout out to Snappy Tats here in Nashville for him. I met my tattoo artist because he saw me at Zany's like years ago, and he DM'd me. He's like, "You were my wife's favorite." I did a new material Monday. He's like, "You were my wife's favorite," and I was like, I'd been following his art and like his page for a while, so I was like, well, I gotta come see you now that we're mutual fans of each other. And he's my main dude that I go to for tattoos.
Good. So you're watching The Office,
yeah, right? And
you're picking up on the humor.
Yeah, and I was just like, and I'd watched that show like multiple times, and I just remember thinking there was a joke, and I just was thinking like, that's funny. Why is that funny? I want to understand that. And that was kind of it. I tried to write out a little set and started going to open mics. My first one was Bobby's Idle Hour on Music Row, and it didn't go terrible. And I mean, my first like 2 times I did Bobby's Idle Hour and then the Springwater open mic when that was still happening.
Did you tell the audience it was your first time?
No, but I did tell the host at the time, and I think I was also one of the only girls at the open mic too, because Nashville comedy, I mean, you know, like there's always a deficit, I think, of women in comedy in general. And
definitely. But
definitely like 7-8 years ago, I remember I'd be like the only girl on like open mic lineups because there just weren't a lot of people coming out. There were women in the scene, but
there's something very interesting about stand-up where there is like a baptism where comics can be very tough on each other.
Yes.
Especially when you're new to the scene because you're working hard. Who's this new person?
Oh, yeah.
But I think what's so warming about comedy is I've never, not once, been at an open mic where when someone says it's their first time, they weren't warmly greeted by other comedians.
I agree.
And that's so special.
Yeah.
That, it's tough work. You know, it's 10 years, it's 15 years, whatever. Right. It's tough work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like all are welcome, all have a story to tell.
Right. And it's like, and then it's like, because I feel like it's such a blank slate too, to go up to a warm room, an encouraging room, that it's really yours to lose.
Yeah.
So if you can't either, you know, like your first set may go amazing, but then you don't go out again for like another like 3 months or whatever, or you never do it again.
You're like, I'll ride that high as long as I can.
Right. Or you eat shit for the next 6 months, which is what I did pretty much, you know, after my first couple of sets going really well.
The energy, the addictive nature of a good first set can probably ride you for 6 months.
I agree. It's
and then you might be like, all right, maybe I'm done, and then you hit that good set again.
I know.
Like, we're back, baby.
Right? It's addictive. It's like a really powerful drug, you know?
And I think it can be a good addiction because what I like is that you don't compete against time the way an athlete does, or like in other industries. Mm-hmm. You can work towards it. You have a story to tell, and like your story changes. Like I'm talking about having a son now.
Yeah.
That's like different than if my comedy, my second year was like, dude, sex. And maybe I'm still talking about it, but just from a different perspective.
Right.
And it's like all are welcome. Now you might not relate to everybody, but that's part of the Rubik's Cube. It's like, how do I find out what I have to say? I tried to do these jokes the other night on a clean show in front of a bunch of older audience members. And the jokes are highly critical of the boomer generation. But I'm learning how to tell these jokes to boomers. Yeah. You know, and then I definitely can get them told in front of the younger crowd, but I'm learning to make it work everywhere. And it's like, that's kind of part of telling jokes is how do I negotiate this through a different courses. Right.
Which I feel like there's always like kind of two schools of thought with that stuff. I'm definitely in the same camp as you with like, you're hired for a job, you got to entertain, do the job, you know? But also there's people who are like, well, if you just don't get my comedy. It's like, no, because it's fucking stupid and it's not funny, you know? And the people just aren't willing to change, and it's, unfortunately, there's been a market for that too, I feel like, where people can like say whatever they want, and it's like, well, if you don't like it, then you just don't understand what I'm doing.
And that might be true a percentage of the time, but on average, it's an inexperienced comic, unable to relate to that audience.
Yes, exactly.
It's not Bill Burr doing it.
No.
And you know, it's someone who did have a joke work one time, so they think it's going to work every time.
Right.
And you just learn, like, no, that's not always how it works. Like, you just have to be, you got to be sort of flexible to, you know, your job is to relate to the audience.
Right. And it's like, if people need to look at it more, it is an art form, it is a form of self-expression, but when you're hired for a gig, then that's work. You know what I mean? And when people who don't get it or don't want to get it, it's that like really frustrates me, you know?
So aside from, I want to even go deeper into you. Yeah. You were breaking down some jokes on The Office. Yeah. What made you think you could go to an open mic? Did you see a sign somewhere? Did someone say, hey, try this out on stage?
I just looked up, like, there's this website, and it's still up, called NashvilleStandup.com. I think, I don't remember, I think Drew Davis is running it now, and it just had, like, a list of, like, here's, like, open mics, and here's places you can go and watch comedy and whatever. And I think I was just delusional enough to be like, I can go do that. You know what I mean? Because I played music, had been on stage, I did acting as a kid, all that stuff. So I was already used to like entertainment, and pretty much had only really done mostly entertainment stuff growing up, as far as like hobbies and all of that. So I think that's just kind of what it was, where it's like, well, I'll go try this, you know, what have I got to lose?
Now, your dad worked at a bank, which is probably, no offense to people that work at banks, but the exact opposite of, you know, it's very, you know, they say like banker's hours, it's like a very standard job. So how did they feel about like that this was what you're doing?
I mean, who knows if they have found me online or not, but they don't really know, to be honest.
Really?
I just don't. I mean, I told them a little bit at the beginning that I was interested in comedy writing, and like I've been doing.
Is your relationship that fractured?
Yeah, for the most part.
How often do you talk to them, say, on the phone?
I mean, probably like once a week, you know.
And they don't ask like...
They do, but it's like, it's one of those things, and this is maybe one of my blind spots where I just kind of shut it down, because I just don't want to talk about it. It just feels almost like gross to do. I don't know. So that's definitely a me thing.
Do you feel shame?
Yes, but I'm not sure from where that's stemming from. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what's good about shame. It's like you feel it, and you would have. It's like, I would love if I could fix it. I don't know why I eat a lot. When I feel,
why I'm sad. Right. God, I know. And like, so I don't know if I'm ashamed of like what I do as a comedian, or if I'm embarrassed of them finding out, or like what, because I don't think I say anything remotely disparaging about like them or I talk about my childhood and how just weird it was. I mean, I don't meet a lot of people anyway who grew up, who were adopted, and also like had the homeschooled and all those things. So I talk about that. That's the one thing that no one can steal from me, because no one can steal those jokes.
Can I tell you my general belief of homeschool people?
Yes, please.
I have cousins that were homeschooled. And again, I'm not telling you this just so you can correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I believe most people that are homeschooled because their parents' ideologies don't line up with the public school system.
Yeah, that was 100% it. I mean, I mean, like my, I know people who were homeschooled in like 5th grade or 6th grade because they brought in sex ed. Homeschooled for only that year, then went back to public school after that to be taught sex ed at home, which was not being taught anything at all, you know?
As if you couldn't do both.
Right, exactly.
I did not get much of a sex ed talk from my mom.
Yeah.
The school, the cafeteria.
Yeah.
That's where I learned the truth.
Right, exactly. For me, it was like being at my cousin's house and like watching HBO accidentally, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because there are people that like, they don't want slavery taught in school, which I think it's look, I'm sure there are examples where the school system did get something wrong.
Right.
Because I know school systems that taught that the Civil War was not because of slavery, you know. And textbooks in the past have had misinformation. So like, I do understand the idea, like I want to like, but it's the same way with like, I don't want to be my son's coach. Right. I want him to learn from somebody else.
Right.
I can readjust his swing if that coach sucks.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't think my son will form an ideology based on what he's learned at school. If I raise him right, he will understand, oh, this teacher's teaching me this thing, which doesn't mean it's the empirical truth.
Right.
And all of that.
Yeah, and especially with like having the internet and the age of information, like there's always ways to fact check that kind of stuff too.
Do you know exactly what your parents, like why they homeschooled? Like you said, a friend because they didn't want sex ed. But
right. I think it was specifically like, you know, was for that reason, just they didn't want me exposed to just the world, which is like, sounds really fucked up to put it, but like that's kind of what it was, is like, we were part of a homeschool co-op, and all the moms, all the parents that were part of it felt the same way about the school system. It's like, we want to teach our kids what we want them to know, and, you know, not be they would call it being brainwashed in a public school, whereas I feel like being homeschooled can kind of lean into being brainwashed a little bit. Yeah, what's
more likely, a diverse amount of opinions from having 5 different teachers,
or different classmates, you know, like, I mean, it would have, even like the co-op that we were part of, very homogenous group of people, you know, again, they all think the same, that's why they homeschooled their kids. That's why all those people homeschooled their kids, because they wanted everyone to have the same beliefs.
And
system.
I think that's the problem I have in part with religion.
Yeah.
And people get very attacked by this. I'm not attacking people's God or what they believe in. It's the humans that all have to think the same way.
I know.
Like, you'll find some churches have to be MAGA and some are liberal, and it's like just the idea that like we can't all have our own thoughts because we have this hierarchy, like sort of mentor that tells us what to think, is kind of dangerous. And,
I know.
And there's a difference between high control religion and normal religion. It comes in different levels. Like, and the same thing with different types of news. Like, what we consume doesn't have to be all my way or the highway type of thinking. But it tends to lean in that direction when people want structure. I think naturally we're all like ants that want just like a structure.
I think that's what it is too, because you know, I was thinking about this the other day, that it's so crazy to me how much of, you know, Christian ideology is seeped into our culture, into American culture, even like before, you know, like it just always has been there. And I think that's really weird, you know what I mean? Just to think like, how did one way of thinking become how a whole country is kind of, even though they say church and state is separated, I don't think that it really is.
People with like posters of like Jesus and an American flag shirt. It's like, I know. You realize he was from the Middle East,
and he
was brown.
White.
He was brown.
Yeah,
he was, and it's like, but
they want their Christian Bale Jesus. You know what I mean?
I love thinking of what Jesus stood for. You know, I'm sure he would have wanted everyone to receive medical help.
And just chill the fuck out. I could just say, like, yo, just chill out.
But anyhow, so I think that's wild that your parents, now, do you think there's a scenario where like you do want to present to them, you know, what you do, but only when you've got, you know, like sometimes people are like, well, I filmed this thing, it's on TV, so now I feel like I've got the thing I can show them. Is it like that where you want to?
I don't know, to be honest. And this is something I've talked about in therapy extensively too, that I've just like, I mean, they either know what I'm up to, or they have found out, or they will know what I'm up to. I feel like, you know, at some point.
If it was, if we weren't talking about comedy and we were talking about your sexual preference, which we don't, I don't mean to get into that, but I'm just saying, if it was,
we can get into that.
No, but like I'm just using it as an example. If you're, what another beautiful home. Golly, that's
huge. Really cool.
Oh my gosh.
That's like something you'd see like in LA or something.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Anyhow, just imagine if we were talking about you, if you were gay. If I were your parent and I knew you were gay, I would want to tell you, hey, it's okay, we know you're gay. That's totally, I would want to almost diffuse you from any preconceived notions you have. If I were the parent who didn't care that you were gay. If it's a don't ask, don't tell, and your parents are kind of like, well, we don't really see the value in creativity until you can prove that it's an income, that's a whole different topic to have.
No, I think it is honestly, I think sometimes it would, I don't want to say it'd be easier if I were gay, because that would explain why I've been single for so long. And almost, not even an act of defiance of just like, well, I don't know. But I feel like it's just that I just don't want them having information about me to, I don't know, to like use against me, but I don't think they would. It's just the way that we grew up, like my family, especially my mom's side, they all are very like negative people that like to like pick on each other and are very like just like to poke holes.
Sounds like they'd be good comedians.
Honestly, my grandma was probably like, she was one of the funniest people. I mean, she was incredibly racist, but like incredibly sexist. Did vote for Hillary though, which is
incredibly racist. Towards a specific race, or was she
everyone, literally everyone?
And she was white.
Yes, and she even like didn't like I have a joke about this too, but she didn't like the Beatles because she didn't like their accents.
All right, so she was like,
she hated everyone.
Yeah, okay.
She didn't like Charlie Brown and Snoopy. Like, I don't know, just stuff like, she just didn't like a lot of things, honestly. The things that she did, but she did ride really hard for like John Denver for some reason.
Oh, funny. But that's what can be hard about stand-up, is that a lot of comedy, just about all comedy, is built on a negative premise, but you can't be a negative person. You could be, but it's like, why live that way? So honestly, so how do you be like a positive person who's like, I'm self-actualizing, I'm letting the world open up its doors to everything I want, but also airline food sucks, and, dude. And you just have to be able to like separate the two, I guess.
Right. And I come from like a funny family, like, especially like my mom's side of the family, all very funny people because they are so critical, but also with that came a lot of insecurity and hurt, just if, like, where I think it's almost a knee-jerk reaction where I don't want to share with them what I'm up to, or like, just because I don't want to give them any fodder for like, what's like, oh, Cortney's doing that. Like, you know what I mean?
I want to relate to you here.
Yeah.
I'm terribly insecure about thinking my wife's family doesn't respect my stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
They've never asked to come to a stand-up show.
Oh.
Or taken any interest in asking about my career.
Right.
But they're probably happy to know that I'm doing well online with things like that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when I was young. After my first job, I got fired after 6 months. Mm-hmm. Shortly thereafter was the recession that happened in 2008.
Right.
And my mom told somebody that I got laid off. Mm-hmm. And I had to say, Mom, I got fired.
Yeah.
And the difference meant something to me because I felt, and I'm sure she was just trying to not have to get into a combo. It sounds
nicer.
I didn't get fired for some crazy reason. I sucked at the job, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I got fired. It meant so much to me to be like, don't lie on behalf of me. And I actually had this like stupid one-liner that I said the other night, and it's not a joke I've really ever told, but it popped.
Yeah.
And it was that like my mom doesn't like that I make YouTube content. She tells her friends that I'm a video engineer at Google. But it was like that, and they got to laugh, and I was like, oh. Yeah. But it's like parents are always trying to polish up what you do.
Yeah.
And it's because it's the insecurity of wanting to know, like, I raised my kid well enough.
Right. Like,
this is what they do.
It's the ego.
And that's ego.
Yeah, we're the extension of them. So if we're not crushing it, oh, that's such a cute dog. Oh.
Right.
If we're not crushing it, then they're like, oh, well, we're failures. So I feel like they look at it almost like that. And like, I hear from my parents are very proud of me of whatever I'm doing, because I have a pretty good day job, and it's in finance. Oh, nice. So, and so we talk about that. So like, instead of talking about comedy, I tell them like, oh, I got a raise, or I got a promotion, or I did X, Y, and Z, and my job's super happy. And they love hearing about that stuff.
And I think parents, and I don't mean this like politically conservative, are very conservative in the fact that they want you to have a retirement. They want to know they did their job, and they want to know all these things exist,
right? Because
that's like the safest thing for you,
right? And
creativity is never safe. If it was, you wouldn't kind of do well at it, because like you wouldn't have the ambition to go out and get it, because it'd be like, it's whatever. So I see parents, just for the most part, like the best way to look at it is they do want what's best for you, and they don't know how to brag about you,
right?
But also it's deafening when you do work in the arts and you don't get the the response you want, which is like, I'm artistic.
Right, yeah.
Don't care about how much I'm making on YouTube. Care about that I'm perform on stage.
Right, and then you're fulfilled and happy and healthy and yeah.
And what I hear from people is that get over it.
Yeah,
because
yes, me too.
That's their issue if they don't know what it's like. And my only like thirst is that like, just ask me.
Right, exactly.
We just had an hour long or whatever long conversation talking about things that are really important to us.
Yeah.
And I think that positive energy will reflect in the audience. And yet people that I care about, like I want my wife's family to think that like we've got this great plan and things are going well, but you don't get that until your name's on the marquee at an institution they've heard of.
Right, exactly.
And that might be in the old days David Letterman or SNL or all these things. And then they get to take that and brag to their people.
Oh my God,
but this isn't a currency they know how to cash in yet.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, well, the internet, what's that? You know? I feel you on that. That's definitely, I think, you know, if I'm ever lucky enough to get to a point where my stuff is more in the mainstream, then I guess I'll have to have a conversation. We'll have to talk about it, you know? But there's nothing tangible at this point to like be like, hey, this is what I've accomplished in 8 years. You know what I mean? I mean, there are things that I feel like I've accomplished, that I have milestones. Like I've run a pretty cool show at Third Man Records. I, you know, travel a lot, open for people, whatever, but they just don't, they're not.
It's, like I said, it's just not a currency they can digest. It's like not, like you have rungs on the ladder, but they only see the ceiling. And I have an aunt who was an actress for 40 years, and I can call her and tell her I got an audition for something. And she'd be like, oh my gosh, how many pages? That's incredible. You gotta, and even if you don't get a call back, like, she would appreciate that win that someone else might go, did you book it?
I know.
And you're like, you're missing the point. 1,000 people submitted for this. I got, you know, and so it's like, it's hard. I think creatives are pretty defensive people. And I don't know if it's, I mean, everything does come back to the ego, but I think it's like, well, you just want to know you've got a place in the sort of hierarchy of like your family and your social group.
Right.
And so a lot of that is like just fair. And in the standard world, if you work at a bank, that business card shows that that's where your place is.
Right, exactly.
What the hell do we get to show for?
Nothing. It's like, here's my Instagram. Do you want to look at it?
I'm verified. I pay for it.
Right, exactly.
And maybe the answer, and maybe that's part of the struggle is like, well, find the meaning outside of the title, or make that title.
Right, exactly. And which I mean, just in this day and age with us in entertainment, like it's so it's almost like the Wild West, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Where there's no structure of like, hey, you eventually get your 30 minutes on Comedy Central, and then you go and do the Tonight Show, or vice versa. And then you get your hour long on Netflix or on HBO, and then you headline whatever, and that's just not even. And like,
now you might just kill it so big on YouTube, you buy your own special, and then it's like, whatever. It's like it has the same end. Do you sell tickets or not?
Right.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think what's so funny is like my generation, we all wanted to be firemen and astronauts and Major League Baseball players. Yeah. And now I'm on YouTube. Yeah. And the next generation wants to be on YouTube. Right. But it's like not cool to my people. But again, I get tons of respect from comedians who go, oh my gosh, they would trade everything for what I'm doing.
Honestly,
and then that's fine and all that. But then you go, oh, but I'm still not worth sharing to my siblings. And it's like, it sounds so pitiful to say it, but you just kind of, it's like, you acknowledge it and you go, all right, that's not my audience. Right.
Literally, that's such a simple but perfect way of putting it. That's not my audience. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah, family aren't fans.
No, that's true.
I was told that, and I was like, yeah. Because, and another thing, just on the technical side, when people were starting out on YouTube, there's benchmarks to get monetized. One is get 1,000 subscribers. Right. And so people would ask everyone they know to subscribe. Right. I see comedians do this all the time, where they go, I have a special coming out. Yeah. Everybody subscribe to my channel. And then I go, oh my gosh, if they don't click on your video, then you've got all these subscribers and you're telling YouTube that your content isn't watched because your subscribers aren't really your fans. Oh, yeah. So whenever anyone says, like, even my sister, she'll be like, send me the link to so-and-so. I say, Google my name and go find it. Yes, please. Because if you don't tell the algorithm you're looking for me, then none of it matters.
It gets buried. Yeah. Damn.
So, but I see comics all the time trying to mine, and it's like, you're asking the worst audience to watch your special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you're a comedian and you have a bit about chiropractors, go tell chiropractors to watch it.
Right.
Don't tell your family.
Right.
Like, it's just, I did a favor. I clicked on it. You didn't watch it long enough, so the algorithm.
I was going to say, right, because you have to let it play for a certain amount of time.
I lose my mind.
Yeah,
I lose my mind.
you.
But it's just like the energy is there to succeed, but you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And actually working against it. But that's a whole different TED Talk.
No, I feel you on that.
I met you when I visited here, and now I live here.
Yeah.
I had no plans on moving here when we visited.
I remember, because I think people were asking, like, are you going to move here and stuff? Because I remember that at Bowery Vault, and you're like, no, I'm in LA.
I was just there for a podcast.
Yeah.
But meeting you and maybe like a handful of people was all a really good vibe.
Oh,
and honestly, when we did get pregnant, it was the first place we thought of, like, let's look at Nashville.
Yeah.
And so we're happy to be here.
I'm so glad. I'm glad you're here too. I mean, like, when I met you, I'm like, Dave is such a nice person.
Oh,
and
thank you.
You were funny.
I was nervous on that show because the comics were really good. And it was like such a great little room, and there's that little backstage area.
Oh yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. Now tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So I am. You can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, X, now formerly known as Twitter, Venmo, anywhere you want. Mainly Venmo, if you don't mind.
There you go. Money talks.
Right? It's at Cortney Warner 13, but Cortney is spelled without the U.
O-R.
Yes.
No U.
Yes.
My wife's last name's Cortney.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that on Instagram, and I'm just like, I didn't know if it was a middle name.
That's a nice, unique way. C-O-R. Cortney Warner.
Yeah, like Warner Brothers is what I tell people. Then the number 13, and that's my handle on pretty much everything, Facebook, everything like that. And then
we'll have to let our Nashville folks know when we're on a show together.
Yes.
Because we have a nice little Nashville audience. But yeah, go check out Cortney. And what else?
And I want to just, excuse me, you can cut that part out for sure.
It's in it, baby.
I know, it's the caffeine.
Yeah, I got you going. Tell everybody now.
Right now. I'm going to be at Third Man Records on August 17th. It's for my quarterly comedy show. Definitely got to get you on one in the future. I just got a couple more dates for it, so I'll hit you up.
Sure.
But it's going to be August 17th at the Blue Room, Jack White's venue, and there's tickets online at thirdmanrecords.com. It's going to be a fun show. I always book all local comics and then local DJ. Well, this time is local DJs. Actually, Jack White's wife, Olivia Jean, is going to be the DJ. So
fun.
She's a good friend of mine now, too. So it'll be a good time.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you jumping on today. And you have a fantastic story. So, keep sharing it. But if you ever need to tell your parents what you do, just send them a link to this.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'll make them
Mom,
search.
Start at the 20-minute mark.
I will make them search your name.
Thank you. And thanks again for doing the show.
Thank you for having me. This was amazing. I loved it. It felt like a therapy session. So
for me too.
The Rush Hour is a twice-daily pop culture and entertainment news podcast hosted by stand-up comedian Dave Neal. Life's too short for a boring ride, so join Dave as he covers the top news stories of the day. Don't be caught clueless at the water cooler. The Rush Hour with Dave Neal features all the viral TikToks and podcast clips you need to hear, plus feel-good stories and some motivational stuff too. A perfect complement for your commute. Featured in Time Magazine, Washington Post, and Us Weekly. Get your Rush Hour on today.